This month of the How's All That Workin' For You podcast is sponsored by J. Brooks Coffee Roasters in Memphis, Tennessee. Urban Joe is the house favorite at J. Brooks for cold brew coffee. The legendary flavor of Urban Joe will ignite your taste buds with captivating shades of cocoa and cream. With a pleasantly balanced, bold body, the dark roast lover will fall head over heels for this roast. Cold brew is very quick and simple to make. It contains 2/3 less acids than hot brew coffee, so it's a perfect choice for anyone who has reflux or needs a stomach-friendly option for coffee. And if you make cold brew at home, you can make both cold and hot coffee with your solution. Everyone loves an adventure story. Make your day an epic adventure with a steaming cup or cold brew of Urban Joe. To order this signature blend for yourself and learn more about J. Brooks Coffee, click the link in the show notes or visit jbrookscoffeeroasters.com. That's the letter J, brookscoffeeroasters.com. You are officially invited to create some breathing room. This is the absolute best podcast to find the strategies, resources, and motivation you need to stop drowning in overwhelm, break free from hustle culture, and live out your God-given purpose. I'm your host, Rachel Baker, and girl, I've been there, done that. It is my God-given purpose to help you find space for an intentional life so you can confidently live in those strengths, skills, and passions that light you up and serve others. I know you are ready to create some breathing room, so let's do it together. Hey, welcome to episode 2 of Create Some Breathing Room. This episode is our very first guest interview, and I am so excited for you guys to hear this. I had an amazing time chatting it up with Mary Marantz. Mary Marantz, you guys, what even is my life? Okay, just in case there's somebody who does not know who Mary is, let me give you a quick rundown. So Mary Marantz grew up in a trailer in rural West Virginia. She was the first of her immediate family to go to college. She went on to earn a master's degree in moral philosophy and a law degree from Yale. After turning down 6-figure salary law firm offers in London and New York and starting a photography business with her husband, Justin, where, by the way, they were later named one of the prestigious Profoto Legends of Light, side note, they've since gone on to build a successful online education platform for thousands of creative entrepreneurs worldwide. They're basically rock stars. Mary is the best-selling author of Dirt, which was a finalist for the 2020 ECPA Memoir of the Year. It's beautiful. Please go get it and read it immediately. Also, the author of Slow Growth Equals Strong Roots, which we're going to be talking about quite a bit today. But Mary's also the host of a highly ranked podcast, The Mary Marantz Show, which debuted in the iTunes Top 200. Like I said, rock star. Her work has been featured on CNN, MSN, Business Insider, Bustle, Thrive Global, Southern Living, Hallmark Home and Family, and more. You know, it just goes on. She and Justin live in an 1880s fixer-upper by the sea in New Haven, Connecticut, with their very fluffy golden retrievers, Goodspeed and Atticus. If that's not enough and you just really want to dive deep, you can learn more at marymarantz.com. That's MaryMarantz.com. You guys, this conversation today is just dripping with gold. We had such a good chat. We are diving deep into how to manage your capacity, what that looks like, how we try to achieve and overfill our schedules, how to not do that. And we're going to hear from Mary personally on what this looks like for her and her busy, crazy life and all these things that we just talked about that she has going on. So do not miss this one. I'll see you inside. Let's hear a good word from Mary Marantz. Hello, Mary. Welcome. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited you are here today.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. Listen, I got to be in the first imagination of this show.
Oh my word,
It
you
happened
guys.
in part at my kitchen island. So
That's right. Mary has been all up in my business, helping me plan all the business. So I'm just so excited that we are able to connect again today and dive into some of these ideas of how we manage capacity. And just as women who are doing all the things, wearing all the hats, you have written a book that I think speaks so well to this. And I want to get into that. But first, before we jump in, I did a little intro, but tell people who are you, Mary? The existential question, right? Who are you?
Oh man, it depends on how long you want your show to go, but I'll try to give the elevator version. I think the most important sort of like movie trailer elevator pitch version of this to know is I grew up in a single wide trailer in the 80s, in very rural West Virginia. My dad's a logger. My mom cleaned houses. First in my family to go to college. I end up going on to Yale for law school, which is like Willy Wonka's golden ticket.
Right? Amazing.
In terms of law degrees. And, finished 3 years of law school, graduated law school, and had 2 offers at law firms in London and New York, 6-figure offers plus bonuses plus moving, benefits, things like that. Turned them down to become a wedding photographer with my husband, Justin,
As
which is a
one
very
does.
expensive way to become a wedding photographer, I can tell you. But we were looking down these sort of 2 diverging paths. One where I would be, 100 hours a week at the law firm. There was a competition of who had slept under their desk the most that week, versus building something together. And we chose together. We chose the option that would give us the most time to spend our lives together because we actually really like each other.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so that was 2006. So I'm like trying to do that math. What is that? Like 17 years ago, I guess?
Something like that. It doesn't seem like it should be that long ago, though.
16 years ago. Math is really hard. A while ago. And we went full time in our photography business that fall. Turned in my last paper for law school that was due one night, and we went to our first photography conference the next day. And we have been doing that since then. We've pivoted more into editorial photography, and we have online courses for photographers and creatives. We have thousands of people in our online platforms. And then in 2019, just as that was like hitting the height and in a really, all of our boxes and dreams were being checked for that business, it seemed like the really good time to pivot again. And I signed a 5-book deal to become an author and start all over as a beginner in a brand new industry. And so that's been what I've been up to the last 3, almost 4 years, that and a podcast called The Mary Marantz Show.
Yes. Yeah. We're so thankful. I mean, so thankful. So we're going to make sure all books, links, everything are shared so people can find all of that. Your first book that you did, Dirt, was so beautiful. Just going through the hard and the muddy and the coming out of that and just who that makes you as a person and how to keep going through. That was beautiful. And then the next one that I really want to get into today, Slow Growth Equals Strong Roots, is beautiful. And I love this idea of slow growth. It is so opposite to our hustle culture right now, right?
Yeah.
And within that whole hustle culture, what I have found with a lot of my clients, a lot of the coaching I do, is we feel this need to go and do and go and do and go and just fill up until our cups runneth over and we can't fit it all in and we feel like crazy people. Yeah. And so this month, this season on the podcast, we're talking about this idea of capacity. And, we know what that looks like when you talk about volume and measuring and things, but in your own life, what that looks like, capacity. And so when we look at this book and this idea of slow growth and how that can impact your personal capacity, I'd love to hear from you on the value you have found with those two, how they're related, and just that value in slow growth, how it applies to that personal capacity.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love so much that that's the theme for this first month. And I love that you're just really like focusing in on that word capacity in particular, because you don't know this, but that is one of the defining words of my year. I don't even think it's not even like, oh, it's my word of the year, which is great. It's so much more than that, because it's like a deep badge of healing for me.
Mm-hmm.
So let me kind of explain that. So I was actually had her on my podcast, Dr. Allison Cook, and
Love her.
a few months ago, and she has a new book called The Best of You that's out. And there's this part in there where she's talking about, for those of us who grew up a certain way, and it feels like that environment never felt like stability or security, whether that's you just didn't grow up with a lot, or it was like a, volatile home or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
She said, those of us who grew up that way, we can become adults who have to go through some reparenting if we're going to stop kind of a self-sabotage cycle. And she said, think about it this way. Actually, I had seen like a different meme that I brought up in that episode on Facebook, and it was talking about if you have the capacity of a shot glass, meaning this, and I'm going to define capacity in this way, self-trust. This is what I think I'm capable of stewarding well, of handling well. If you think you have the capacity to handle things that's about the size of a shot glass, then anytime your life starts to overflow with abundance beyond that, you will unintentionally and subconsciously self-sabotage to bring it back to fit within that shot glass, because you just don't think you can be trusted with it. And it was talking about, we need to become like infinity pools of capacity. And I don't necessarily, we'll get into some like nuance and depth here in terms of what to embrace about your capacity and what to expand. But it's really, truly been changing me from the inside out, because what Allison said in that episode is the only way forward to change how we think of our own capacity is by setting small but important commitments to ourselves and keeping them. And she said, what we're doing is we're training ourselves to say, there is an adult in the room you can trust. That adult is you.
Love that.
And
Love
it's just rocking my whole world.
Yeah.
So the fact that this is on capacity, I am here for it.
Yeah. Well, and I love that additional spin on this idea of capacity, because a lot of times when we talk about it, we talk about like how much you can handle, like all the things we're trying to do. But I love that idea. Like our capacity also includes that capacity for the good, for the benefits, the abundance, as you mentioned. And again, there are limits for both of those. Which one do we want to increase, that infinity pool idea? And which one do we want to limit? And I think that's so important to think of both sides of that. So I love that. I love that idea.
Yeah. I wrote an Instagram caption not too long ago that I imagine will end up in a book somewhere at some point, because I was like, well, I like that one. And it was just talking about this idea of like, some of us have spent our adult lives feeling a little bit like it's taken a little bit longer, or we're a little bit behind, because some of us have secretly, even without us maybe even realizing it, been worried about who we become if we're people who have more. So it was more eloquent than that in the caption, but the point was, for those of us who didn't grow up with a lot, there's a fear of failure, sure, but there's also a very real, equally, if not bigger, fear of success, because somewhere along the line, we got the message that more would be our undoing.
Right. Like, what do you do with it?
Yeah. Or you'll just become you'll become one of these rich people who are bad people, because that's the message I got growing up, is that there are good people and there are rich people, and the two are not the same.
Right.
So it's been a lot of work unraveling those relationships to money.
Yes. I love that. Yeah. There's a book, Good Money, that I was looking at the other day. And I love that idea. Like you've said, if you come from scarcity, that scarcity mindset, you do not come at money thinking, I can do so much good with so much more, right? It's if I have too much, I will be corrupted.
That's right. And I would say that for a lot of people listening, maybe like it's not money that you're hang up, but maybe it's you secretly self-sabotage because you're afraid that there might come a day when you do get a lot of eyes on what you're writing or what you're creating or what you're putting out there. Like you're equally frustrated. Why is nobody seeing this? Why does nobody care? But there's also a fear of like, oh man, what if this did go viral? What if I did wake up and suddenly everybody was reading it or talking about it? Because what that means is inevitably in your head is more eyes equals more critics, more chances to be hurt, more chances to be publicly embarrassed. So a lot of us are playing small, even though it goes against everything we think we want and dream of, because more equals pain, more equals embarrassment, more equals hurt.
Yes. Or if it's a moral thing as well, I've thought and heard, more eyes, more critics, but more pride, right? If you are heard and seen more, that pride aspect kicks in. And then who am I? There's a lot. Why do we do this to ourselves, Mary? This is ridiculous. All right. So we're going to talk about this idea of capacity, this slow growth in your book. Slow growth equals strong roots. You have these 5 types of women that you talk about. And is it okay? I just want to name those real quick. So everybody here, there's a quiz and it's so fun. Just one of those quick, fun. I love these that you can go and it's what is your achiever type? And I think as we're talking about capacity, a big piece of that as we overflow is we're trying to achieve. Right. And so what does that look like for you? So there's the performer, the tightrope walker, the contortionist, which raising my hand here for that one, recovering contortionist in the room, the masquerader, and the illusionist in the distance.
That's right.
Yeah. So now I got to ask, I'm claiming the contortionist role. Where do you fall in there, Mary?
Yeah, I am 100% the performer. So I'll just kind of describe them a little bit for people listening. The quiz. So I wrote the book first. I wrote Slow Growth Equals Strong Roots first. And what was happening in that book is I was writing these descriptions, these very lyrical, metaphorical, vivid images of the different ways I've felt trying to achieve my way into worth. And what ended up happening is when it came time to design the book, because it's a photo book, it's very design heavy, lots of typography.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's a work of art. It's beautiful.
One of the things I realized, because we were originally going to have a totally different design, but one of the things I realized is that as photographers, Justin and I had done a series of editorial photos for ourselves, never shared them anywhere except for 3 photos on Instagram. We just needed to do something because we were burnt out and we wanted to create without being obligated to anybody else. And we did these 5 different shoots, a ballerina in New Haven, and then 4 looks in Venice, Italy, that I started to realize actually lined up perfectly with these characters we've just mentioned. And the cool thing, Rachel, is that the same model was in all of the shoots. And so I say that these are these different yet somehow the same of the one who's always performing. And in this case, it's literally true. She is all of them. And so the performer is the one who's always on their toes. We took that and I started to say, could it actually be a somewhat scientific quiz? And so we based it on a matrix of how goals make you feel about yourself and how goals make other people see you. Are you driven by those? And so the performer wants to do stuff, achieve goals because it changes how she thinks about herself, but also to show other people how far she's come. And so that's me 100%.
Yeah.
The tightrope walker could care less who's clapping, but they live for higher and higher highs. They really want to push the dopamine, adrenaline limit. The contortionist is not particularly driven by goals herself, but she does it because she wants to make other people love and accept and be pleased with her. Mm-hmm. The masquerader is terrified of letting both herself and other people down, so she hides in plain sight. And the illusionist is kind of like a subversion of the no, I am not driven myself and I don't want to, let other people down or change how they think about me. The illusionist says, I can't even think about that until everything is perfect. And so if you go to achieverquiz.com, ACHIEVER quiz.com, you can take it. It takes about 2 minutes and it'll tell you your type, that type's strength, where you get tripped up, get stuck, and how you move forward with purpose.
Mm-hmm. It's so fun. The quiz itself is fun. The imagery is beautiful. The book, all the photographs that you guys have compiled in there, and just your words, of course, always are just beautiful. So it's a enjoyable, pleasurable book to go through and read through. But there's so much content around this idea of not having to work so hard, achieve so much, move so fast, run out of the gate to be who you are, right? Or who you're working to be, right? And so I just want to talk within this conversation of how we do try to fit in so much, to grow so quickly, be accepted. And there's this one piece. Am I allowed to read from this book, Mary?
I would love that.
Goodness. Okay. So there is on it's page 56 is where it starts. And one of my favorite lines comes out of this section because you're talking about all that we think we have to do in order to call ourselves successful.
Yeah.
Right. And this is all internal thoughts. So you say, we see a friend or a stranger on the internet do A, let's say start a business. And then we see some other person we know do B, maybe start building their dream house. And then we see that person we've looked up to for years post about doing C. Perhaps it's taking that dream vacation we've always wanted to go on, or getting a brand new kitchen that looks like it could have been ripped directly from our kitchen dreaming Pinterest board. And then our brain does this really tricky sleight of hand. And this is Rachel's side note. My brain exploded when I read this next paragraph because it's so true. So Mary says, even though we saw one person do A and another person do B and still another person do C, somewhere in our heads, it becomes, okay, so in order to be successful, I must do all three, A, B, and C. In other words, we build up those three separate mere mortals in our own minds, assemble them into some sort of greater than the sum of their parts transformer. This is my favorite, Mary. This Decepticon of success. What?
I loved that one. I had to fight for that one during copy editing.
I'm glad you did, because it speaks to my soul, my nerdy Transformers loving soul. This Decepticon of success that none of us could ever live up to, because we're giving each of them credit for three things. And in reality, they've done only one.
Yeah,
that's right. Beautiful. I think so many people don't even realize they're doing it.
That's right. Yes.
And so within this conversation of capacity and how we fill the need to do all these things, I'd love to hear from you a little more on that idea.
Oh man, I have so much to say on this. This is the stuff that's coming up immediately, and I'll throw all this out there and then we can dig in even deeper. I do a lot of coaching now. I get a lot of people right in front of me, and I hear them, and I hear this urgency. You can almost feel their heart start to race as they're listing all the things. Should we get that done this week? Should we just, but I gotta make sure I do that too. And we gotta get that out fast. We gotta get that out by that conference. And, there's another part in slow growth where I talk about these lake-made fish, that Justin and I, for real, in real life, saw. We had gone to that first photo conference I was just talking about. It was in California. We decided to drive out into, the desert, into Nevada and onto Arizona, Nevada. I forget which comes first.
Geography. Yeah.
But we were going to the desert is the point. And we needed wide open spaces and some wind in my hair. And we pulled off at Lake Mead to stretch our legs. And there are these fish hatcheries. You're walking down a sidewalk and it gives way to floating dock. And suddenly the water's just churning at your feet with all these gray, gaping, gulping mouths, screaming out at you in silence, begging for a piece of the crumbs. They're pushing each other under just to get this share of the crumbs. And behind them is this gigantic lake, this vast expanse of freedom, that if they would only, these wild things in captivity, if they would only turn around, freedom is at their back. And I talked about this in the book and recently on Instagram, this idea of kindergarten basketball. Wherever the ball goes, we have to chase it. We don't even stop to think if that's our role or our zone or where we should be standing in our power. It's just chase the ball. That's what everyone's doing. And when I coach these women, I have such deep empathy for them because I hear myself, both a younger version of myself in business, and then honestly, full disclosure, at times now as an author, where whatever you're doing, there's this imaginary, not even imaginary, just invisible, floating above all our heads checklist of what it looks like to arrive somewhere. to then be like worthy to stand in some circles or stand on some stages or be taken seriously as a peer by someone you look up to.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what I will say to that. Earlier last year, I crossed a huge bucket list item off of my bucket list, as it were, which was I got the huge honor of getting to go back to my alma mater, my undergrad alma mater of WVU, and be the homecoming parade marshal and ride on a Corvette. It was like not a Corvette, a BMW convertible, and go on the field at halftime and receive an award. And they just read all these accolades over the loudspeaker, like, huge sea of blue and gold looking up. I mean, like,
good.
Bucket list moment. And like, I'm going to say it was like yesterday or maybe the day before, I was sitting here and I felt this ache in my chest that it was over. Like we forget that we get into such a rush to get somewhere that as soon as it happens, you miss it. You miss the anticipation of it. You miss the dreaming of it. You miss like thinking what that would be like. And that's not to say it's not a scarcity comment that there won't be other really beautiful things and other beautiful things at WVU. I got my eye on some other ones.
Yeah.
Graduation, I'm coming for you. But it really like made me go, man, we don't think about that in this great rush to get somewhere. We forget that when we've done it and we've marked it off and it's over, we'll miss it. We'll miss wishing for it.
Hey, it's Rachel, your go-to encourager and coach. I know you love our podcast talks, but imagine taking that connection to the next level in person. I'm more than a clarity coach. I'm someone who's been in the trenches, juggling all the things. I get it. I've danced with chaos, overloaded schedules, and the struggle to prioritize self-care. But I found the rhythm. And I've got the strategies to help your ladies create some breathing room. So if you're organizing an event, whether it's a conference, church gathering, or retreat, and you want a speaker who brings humor, real talk, and a dose of inspiration, I'm your girl. Let's chat about making your event a memorable one. Visit racheldbaker.com/speaking. That's racheldbaker.com/speaking. I can't wait to connect.
I don't know. That was profound for me. That's been a profound, like, whoa.
Yeah.
Maybe we slow it down a little. Maybe we enjoy it a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, that also just reminds me, I did a blog post recently talking about anticipation, leading up these things that we're so excited about. And you get so amped up and it can roll itself into anxiety even. And this idea when we are anticipating so much, or it's so big, or it kind of becomes this ball of anxiety. And when you've got a lot of that and trying to juggle so many things, I feel like when it kind of hits the fan, it's like, what do I even do? What do I even do now? But you're so right. You get to that point and there it went. There it was.
Yeah. I mean, listen, by the time this airs, you will have launched your podcast. You will have gone through launch week. You will have launched those first few episodes. You will have launched maybe even a couple more. And it can be so tempting to go, oh, when I have a podcast, then I'll feel somewhere. When I have a book, then I'll feel somewhere. And what's cool is that we're having this conversation now. So I can say to you, savor it. Take your time with it. Soak in every minute of it, because the women that I coach, like they're in this like breakneck speed to try to get to a certain price point and launch a new brand and speak here and speak there and launch a mastermind or whatever.
Yeah.
And I recognize those Lake Mead fish, that frantic, frenzied, frenetic energy where your heart is racing. And I know this for me, if it is part of the plan for my life and the purpose for my life, it doesn't feel like that.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And we talked about that a little bit back in December when we did our coaching day at your house. That was so good. And that was one of the things I know we talked about was and that comes to mind for me so much when I find myself in that frenetic energy, right? Like, got to do deadlines. Like, whose deadlines? I set my own stinking deadlines. Who put Why are you stressing yourself on your own deadlines? We do it so often. And I say it to my own coaching clients, like, that's your self-imposed deadline. It's okay. It's okay. And I think just to allow that permission, we would allow that grace for others. And so to allow it for ourselves, I think is so good. So I hear you in my head sometimes, Mary, when I get in that energy. I'm like, Mary would
Lake
say,
made fish.
right, lake made fish. Chill the heck out. Just turn around, girl. It's fine.
That's right. That's right.
Go swim around a little. You'll be okay.
That's right. Yeah.
So good. Okay. Well, I've got just a couple more questions as we're wrapping up here. I want to hear a little more from Mary personally, because Mary has a whole lot going on. There's the writing. And I know I've seen recently we're working on book 3, which I'm so jazzed about. So book 3, working on coaching, as we've talked about, the photography business, which is a whole thing. We haven't even talked about Poshmark, which you can talk about here in a second. And then your amazing husband and business partner, Justin, your beautiful dogs. Like, there's a lot going on over there, Mary. So I would love to hear what tools, what strategies, what have you found that's most helpful for you when you get into this managing of capacity mindset? What does that look like for you? Or if not that, just a way that you handle or get past that overwhelm feeling. What does that look like for you?
Well, first of all, so we don't leave people hanging. Poshmark is something we just kind of started for fun when I signed my book deals, and I was, in my writer's cave for days on end. Justin said, I think I'm going to, we had seen some videos from Gary Vaynerchuk called Trash Talk, where he would go to tag sales, yard sales, pick up stuff, for $1 and flip it on eBay. And Justin said, I feel like I'd be really good at that. I think I'm going to start doing this. I think he did a little on eBay, but pretty quickly jumped to Poshmark. And man, it just started taking off. And I started joining him with it because we really love building businesses together. And we just kind of said, hey, what could we make happen? It's now a 6-figure side hustle for us. Just
unreal.
Retail arbitrage, finding things and flipping them online. So that's what that is.
That's so amazing.
Yes. So this kind of comes back. I said earlier, there are the places in our capacity where we need to learn to heal and trust ourselves and prove to ourselves we're good stewards and expand that capacity. And then I think there's elements of capacity where it's more about embracing how we were hardwired to be. And so I am, even though most people never guess this about me, because I do love people, and I especially love scenarios like this where we're having deep conversations. I am, though, full-blown introvert. Like, that is how I recharge. And I used to get really frustrated with that by just how exhausting things like speaking. I love speaking from a stage. I come alive in a way I can't explain when I speak from a stage. But afterwards, when I come off the stage and it's one after another, even though I love that so much, I literally have fallen asleep sitting up in bed waiting for the delivery. What's that called? Room service had arrived. I had risotto sitting in my lap and was sitting up straight up asleep. It's very exhausting for me. And so I used to get really frustrated by that. Oh man, if I was an extrovert, this would be so much easier. But as I've gotten older, I'm in my 40s now. And we were just talking, happy birthday. Welcome to the club.
That's right. Big 4-0.
I've really started to actually not only embrace that, but love that about myself, because I've been reading a lot about sensitive, highly sensitive people. And I'm a huge empath. I absorb other people's emotions like a sponge. I can without them saying a word, instantly know if something's going on. It is a glorious burden to bear, as it were, but it's, I've just really had to learn how to take care of the houseplant that is Mary after things like that. Right. So if we have a full day of coaching or retreat or speaking or workshop, the day after, if not 2 days after, is blocked off solid, because we just know that's what has to happen. And it's just a lot of not moving. I mean, we'll try to physically move and take a walk or something like that. But it's a lot of just me and the dogs and sweatpants.
You're not
Clothes
taking
can't be
coaching calls or deep
touching.
diving into book writing or
and it's just necessary. And so that means for every time I pour out, this is probably the biggest, most important thing besides embracing how you were created, and it's not a weakness, there's a purpose to it. It's really saying, okay, if I am a person who only has a set number of days when she can pour it out like that, a week or a month or a year, I have to then say, what is my highest, greatest contribution? It's from Essentialism, a book called Essentialism, my greatest, highest point of contribution. And that means I then start to say, am I best used spending a day like that speaking from a stage, a one-on-one coaching? Is it just writing books? What opportunities do I have to turn down, even though technically I could be a huge help because it's not my greatest, highest contribution? That's hard. That's hard. When you know you can help people, that's really hard.
I love that. Yeah. Oh, I feel so much of that very deeply. I'm a very social introvert and didn't know that for a long time because I do love people. I just didn't know why I was so exhausted all the time. So I get that. And the empath piece of it, feeling all the feels, it does take energy for all of that. So I love that you have figured out that. And then that word just jumped out at me of being intentional, right? It's not just going to happen. It's never, there will always be something that can fill that space, right? So to intentionally say, yes, I'm doing this big, great thing or this thing that takes my energy. I will decide that this day or the next 2 days, whatever it needs to be for you, is quiet, is still, is whatever it needs to be.
Yeah.
To recover.
And I want to add to that just because I want to really make that clear. Sometimes the answer will be coaching this one person is the greatest impact. Sometimes it will be speaking from the stage to many people. Sometimes it'll be like, teaching something online, whatever the case is. For me, it is not always what has the most eyes on it. Sometimes it is like what is done in shadows, what is done in quiet places. And each time you just kind of have to, for me, that's praying through it and just sort of saying like, where am I being asked to be obedient? Where am I asked to be used? And just it's hard because you do end up disappointing a lot of people, but you just know that if you don't measure, do that in a measured way, you're going to crash and burn. And I've crashed and burned too many times, to think that's not going to be the outcome.
Yeah. You've learned that lesson.
I always tell people, listen, burnout is not, we think it's coasting to the side of the road because you've run out of gas. It is not. It is slamming into a brick wall 90 miles an hour and then the transmission falls out. It is a hard stop and a sudden stop and a hard drop or whatever.
Yes.
And it's brutal. And when you're in the depths of burnout, you feel like I may never come back from this. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's what we want to prevent from people. So that's this, the point of this conversation. We don't want listeners to get to that point. Or if you've come close or you feel close to that point, like, let's hit the brakes, have a conversation. What does that look like? And I love you also spoke to something that we talk about a lot here in this community of just taking a hot second to identify who you are as God created you, your strengths, your skills, what does take and give energy. Like that's such a big piece of then knowing even what your capacity is or what you need in that way. So I love you spoke to that too. That's so good. Okay. Last 2 questions. Do you feel like, and you've spoken some to this, but do you feel like you're able to create breathing room in your daily life? Do you feel like that's something you're able to do?
I think it is, the short answer is yes, but the longer answer is yes, with a giant dose of grace for the season I'm in. So when we are running up to book release day, not so much. We're doing some things. Luckily, we live here on the water in Connecticut, and there's a nice seawall we can walk on right outside our door. And so
it's gorgeous, you guys. It's like the most beautiful, like, let's just take a walk in the most beautiful setting. It's so nice.
It is. And it's a really great, there are no excuses for not taking that kind of a break, But when we're in like a 12-hour, 15-hour a day. Launch week is a month away. Launch week is 2 weeks away. Launch days, 2 weeks away. I am a lot more patient with myself of like, yeah, this probably isn't like a super balanced schedule. Some life guru would not be thrilled with me right at this moment. But I know it's not forever, right? We're going to go hard. We're going to go hard leading up to launch. We're going to go hard for a solid 2 to 3 months after. Then we're going to intentionally slow it back down.
Yeah. There's that word again. There's that word, that intentional.
Yeah.
I love it. That's so good. The awareness, the grace, the intentionality.
Yeah.
So good. All right. I would love to hear just a book, which always picking one is so hard. I don't know how people pick just one thing, but just if there is a book or a podcast that you would recommend to our listeners, other than your own, because obviously those are like, duh, you guys, all of it. The podcast, the books, all of them are amazing. But one outside of yours,
yeah,
what would it be?
Sure. The number one book that's coming to mind is from my favorite author, Shauna Niequist, Present Over Perfect.
Oh, it's so good.
Yes. So good. And there's this line. Oh, I need to just memorize it word for word so I can just spout it off. But here's the gist of it. She says, it's like I am flying down the road 100 miles an hour. My hair's on fire. I'm doing all the things. All of this stuff is coming at me. I race into the 7-Eleven parking lot, run inside, put my head under the Slurpee, slushy, whatever machine. The red sauce is dripping down my face. And I get back in the car and keep going 100 miles an hour again. And she said, and all I want is one real strawberry. And I feel that on like a visceral mitochondrial DNA level because it's fast and it's artificial and it's busy for the sake of busy and it's out of control and you don't feel like you have a choice in it and you just got to keep going and it's messy and it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel nourishing and all you want is to savor one sweet strawberry. And she talks about in that book that she feels like a switch got flipped somewhere along the line and all of the essentially like the bootstraps broke, the picking herself back up, the heavy weight, the showing how capable she is. Something broke, she said, and she's not going back. And I had her on my show last year, which was just like, high point of my life. And she said that she was talking about like having conversations with her publisher. And she said, we can do it fast or we can do it right. We can do it fast or we can do it out of love. She said, but here's the thing. I'm not doing anything anymore that feels like competition or striving or trying to prove anything to anyone. And she said, so if you want to book with me, there's only one option. And I was just like,
get it, girl. Preach.
Like slow clap, because it's true. Swap the words publisher and book for anything else in life. Yeah. Like if you want this from me, you want me to bring this into the world, it can't be out of any of these motivations. So that's my recommendation.
I love that. I was going to say, if like the page number, I can straight pull it off the shelf, right? Just read it. It's so good.
We could probably Google it and bring it up.
If you
Google Shauna Niequist, One Real Strawberry, it will for sure come up.
I may have to include that as we wrap up at the end here. I love that book. She's so good. I know that honest, real, just out for the world. That is what I am here for. 100%. Just that open vulnerability makes all the difference. I love that. Okay, Mary, what a joy. Thank you so much. First guest on the Create Some Breathing Room podcast. Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you for being here.
Where can people find
you? Where can we find you, Mary?
Yeah, I say the best place to go, like the hub to start, is just marymarantz.com, MaryMarantz.com. And from there, you will easily be able to click over to the 2 books, Dirt and Slow Growth Equals Strong Roots, the podcast, the blog with all the show notes of recent episodes, my speaking page, things like that. You can make sure you take that quiz, achieverquiz.com or marymarantz.com/quiz. Both will get you there. And then it's just at Mary Marantz on Instagram, and come over and send me a DM afterwards. Let me know which type you got. on the cheaper clicks.
Dude, you guys, listen, it's one of those things where people say like, come DM me on Instagram. And you think they're never going to read that, or their assistant's going to read it. They're not going to, y'all, Mary's going to read it and she's going to message you back.
That's
okay.
Right. That's right. I am.
Yes.
Unless I'm introverting.
Listen, those are the conversations that are not as difficult to do, right? In your PJs on the couch. I love it. I love connecting on Instagram. So thank you for this today. This has been a beautiful conversation. You guys make sure and go find Mary. She posts the most beautiful things and you will be so glad you did. So thanks, Mary. We'll talk again soon.
Yeah.
How amazing was that conversation with Mary Marantz? I'm so thankful that she was able to join us and talk about this idea of managing our capacity versus all the things we're trying to achieve. I don't know about you, but I have gained so much just from this one conversation. And if you didn't know Mary before, you do now. You know how much you need her in your life, and you've got lots of resources to get. So I always want to recap when we finish up these episodes, make sure you've got something to take away. So here's the main thing I want to make sure you remember today. Trying to achieve too much, too quickly is always going to lead to a life that exceeds your capacity every single time. So knowing yourself, knowing your goals, and knowing your personal capacity is key to leading that life that you love and being able to create some breathing room for yourself. All right, guys, if this content was helpful for you, there are 2 things you can do that are really going to support this podcast. First thing, hit that follow or subscribe button. And secondly, screenshot this episode while you're on it, share it to your Instagram stories so others know that you enjoyed it. Make sure you tag me at rachel.d.baker. And don't forget to tag Mary at Mary Marantz. And that way we can connect with you. Like we said, legit in the DMs, we like connecting with people. So make sure you do that. I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks so much for listening today. Be sure to check the show notes to get links for all the resources mentioned in this episode. As always, your reviews make such a difference, so thank you for taking the time to leave those for us. Your ratings and thoughts mean so much. I love reading each and every one. As we wrap up today, please remember, life can feel crazy and overwhelming sometimes, but you will never regret taking the time to create some breathing room.